California Board of Occupational Therapy, and I'd like to get started with our the second day of our August 2018 meeting, August 24th, 2018. Pardon me, this is a message from our absent executive officer who is sick today, and she is unfortunately not here. Heather Martin is not here and able to be with us today because of due to illness. She's in her hotel room ready to fly home, but she's checking on the first item on our agenda to give additional information. I'm going to turn this off so it doesn't disturb us. Pardon me. During the cast. Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. May we have roll call?
Beata?
Here.
Denise?
Here.
Jeff is absent. Laura is absent. Myself, Sharon, here. Richard?
Here.
Okay.
We have thank you. We have a quorum. I would like to welcome our guests to the meeting today as well, and to ask them if they would like to introduce themselves. It's not obligatory, but you may.
Sure, thank you. My name is Heather Kitching. I'm the president of the Occupational Therapy Association of California.
I'm Beverly Zoban, and I'm currently a student at Cal State Degrees.
Kristen Devil, State Affairs Manager with AOTA.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. We also have our webcast technician guy. What's your name? Bryce. Hi, Bryce. Jody Quesada of the staff, board staff, and our attorneys, Noreen Marks and Rosa Fitchkash. I just have one comment, President's remark. That's not. I wanted to thank the University of St. Augustine for hosting us today. It's a beautiful facility, very, very nice, very convenient, perfect for this setting, and allows people to come in and see us. It's great. I also want to especially thank Deontay Reese, who works here and has been extremely helpful to us with materials that we need to get together that we needed printed out, and he's been a wonderful host, and it's just terrific. So I appreciate that very, very much. Thank you very much. He may actually come in with more because we've been putting demands on we requested, and it's been very helpful. Moving on from item 13, is there a public comment for session items not on the agenda? Hearing none, I see shaking heads. So we will move on to item 9B from yesterday. 9B was a carryover from yesterday. It is a discussion of AB 2221, which is the Occupational Therapy Practice Act bill currently in the legislature. It came to our attention yesterday during discussions that this bill may have undergone some changes from the version we have in our packets, and that we might want to carry it over to today to see if we can get hold of a copy of that for the board to look at it. The board has taken a position of support if amended on a previous version of this bill. Did the board members receive this document and have a chance to read it?
Received it this morning and
Yeah, we just got it.
Yeah.
We kind of just got it. Do you want a few more minutes to look at it, or?
no. I mean, I can look at it as we speak about the
Okay.
sections.
Now, there's a possibility. The version that we have is the August 20th version of this bill, and our understanding from our discussions yesterday with Heather Kitching and Krista Neville here in the gallery is that there may be another version of this bill coming out today.
Yes, we expect that the draft coming out today should include all of the amendments agreed upon when we attended 1 week ago the Board of Psychology's meetings.
And does this 820 version contain those same amendments, or is the version coming out today different from that one?
It should be different.
Should be different. So we do not yet have the absolutely current today's version. We don't have today's version. That's the text I just got earlier. This from Heather was she's trying to see if she can get hold of that and bring it to us. But I understand that Kristen's leaving in 45 minutes, and this is an opportunity. We have this one to work with at the moment.
Did you want to make your offer?
Sure. I mean, I pulled up on my phone the amendments that were negotiated with the psychology board that do not appear in this version, and if it's the board's pleasure, I can read them to you.
Okay, because this one has the clinical counseling.
Right, it has that piece,
But
but
there's
there's
more?
another piece that's not included,
Please.
to my knowledge. Okay. If you look at very bottom of page 3 of the bill, and I'm assuming my copy is the same as yours.
It sometimes isn't, because
It's
this is
not?
printed off of the
Okay.
website.
Oh,
So if you
okay.
could identify the section, that would actually be.
So it's section 257.2, the definitions, L, the definition of occupational therapy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's several sentences into that definition, the sentence beginning with through engagement in everyday activities. If you can find that.
Last sentence of it.
On my copy, it's at the very bottom of page 3.
It's the bottom sentence.
Right, okay.
It's the last sentence, through engagement, everyday
Right.
activity. Yeah.
So that has been changed to read as follows. Through engagement in everyday activities, occupational therapy promotes mental health by supporting occupational performance in people with or at risk of experiencing a range of physical and mental health disorders. That is how that has been amended to read.
By supporting occupational performance.
In people with or at risk of experiencing a range of, and then you insert physical and, so it reads physical and mental health. And then it strikes everything from disorders down to abuse.
Kristen, what's a range of physical and mental?
Health disorders.
Okay.
So including but not limited to psychiatric behavioral, that's all struck?
That's all gone, that's correct.
For the rest of the paragraph?
Yes. And then that's it, that's the only piece that I believe you're missing.
Oh, okay.
So is it fair to draw a crosswalk that the emphasis was for us to have our frame of reference in there as we work with this population, this area, this practice area? And the occupational performance, are those the key words that they've asked to have inserted?
And also that we added in by supporting versus and supports functioning. The interpretation of some of the members and others at the psychology board meeting was that the language and supports functioning and then all of that other stuff that was scratched out seemed to imply that we were practicing as mental health interventionists at a level that they didn't feel was appropriate for our scope of practice. So they felt like the language was broad enough that it sounded like we could do some of the things the two of us mentioned yesterday, that we could like hang a shingle and start seeing people for psychological type interventions, or they were just very wary about the language being so broad that OTs could step a little bit outside of what their expertise was. And that conversation, by the way, was contextualized by them admitting that they knew and respected what our expertise was in the realm of mental health, but that particular language in the bill didn't sit well with them for that reason, that it simply might be too broad. So there was a conversation that resulted in this language, which most of us on the OT side were pretty comfortable with. We felt like it still described what we were trying to say we do, and then they felt better about it too.
I may have misunderstood when I asked if the rest of the paragraph was struck.
Oh, no,
Kristen,
no,
you
I'm
said
sorry.
no. You
I'm
said
sorry.
yes, but I'm seeing that there are other things in there unrelated to the topic at hand that maybe it was the rest of the sentence that was struck?
It was the rest of the sentence, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
So
Yes.
it goes from mental health disorders, period, then to occupational therapy techniques that
That's
are used,
still in.
et cetera. That's
all still in, yes,
Steps,
sorry
okay.
about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, good catch, Richard.
And that is the only change in the new version that's different
That's
from
my
the version we're seeing in
understanding,
front of us?
Yeah.
The only change that would have been, as far as I know, offered by the Board of Psychology. I don't know if there've been any other changes.
We can't know, yeah.
to the bill.
All right, so the board, thank you. So the board has a position of support if amended on an earlier version of the bill. The question before the board today is, looking at this bill anew, is there are a couple of possibilities. We could change our position, reaffirm a position on the newer version of the bill. We could, we have two versions, one that was in front of us and one that we haven't seen yet that we you to know exactly what it looks like. What are your thoughts?
Reaffirm. I think it's good to send a message at each stage, and reaffirm seems to me an appropriate action.
And it was it's been, we might want to do it on this version, and then we could. It's possible to also do it on the next version, provided, but we don't exactly know what it looks like, kind of thing. So I don't know.
But either way, the board would have spoken at each step of the process. Communicated their support.
We have a question from Sharon that
I was just trying to look for the CBOT amendments.
Oh, yes, so the two things that we were looking at from our letter were that educators of occupational therapy education programs in California must be licensed, which are...
It's in there.
It's on page, or it's in section, it's page 7 of our copy, near the bottom, section 2570.18, H and I. So I'll draw your attention to that section and read it.
And also, if I may, President Buchalter, it's on page 2 as well, and it's there outlining in the beginning what was and what the bill now has. It reaffirms right there that the bill includes the language specific to the educator.
Thank you. And then the other part was the removal of the change in how advanced practice is the attestation, which since it's been removed, we have to remember which section that was. Let me have a look here.
Well, it identifies again on page 2 that the bill eliminates proposed professional limitation.
But we want to look at the actual text of the bill. I believe text
Got it.
2 is not the actual text. So where is that? In the actual text? Where is it not? Where is it not in the actual text? The advanced
70.3B.
70.3B?
D.
D.
I believe.
An occupational therapist may provide advanced practice. Thank you, Jeff. An occupational therapist may provide advanced practice if the therapist has the knowledge, skill, and ability to do so and is demonstrated to the satisfaction of the board that he or she has met educational training and competency requirements. So that was where the change attestation has been changed. Page 4 of your copy, right there. So those are the two items addressed in our letter, the board's letter.
Looks like they're in there.
Yeah, it does, yeah. So, are there any other issues that the latest language raises from, based on the board's review? Any other changes you feel need to be brought to the board's attention, public members? So what action do you think we want to take?
Well, if we would like a motion reaffirming our position, would it just be a statement the board makes, or would I make a motion that we reaffirm?
To put out another letter to.
No, we're not going to put out another letter, but we've read this version of the bill. My motion would be to affirm our position, which is support if amended.
Basically, you're indicating that you're not going to change the board's position, right?
Right. So do we need a motion, or is it just a statement?
I don't think you need a motion.
Okay.
Or we could do support, if you wanted to also just say support since the amendment's been made, but then the amendments could be changed. You know, there's still could be a change in the next version of the bill, theoretically, not that we expected.
It may still worthwhile to do a motion nonetheless.
And then what about the next version that comes out? How does that affect the next version that comes out? If we wouldn't be able to speak to that.
You could make a motion to reaffirm the board's position based on what is available as of today. You
What if we, I don't know, if we did, but we don't have the new version, so we really can't. Yeah.
Today's motion would be in relation to the version dated August 20th.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be in the motion?
Yeah, we'll just do that.
Yes, yeah, I would.
So that people know specifically we are reaffirming our support for the bill as it's stated in the amended publication from Senate dated August 20th. Is something like that, or?
I thought you were addressing the changes that have been read, which aren't in August 20th version.
We could support this version of the bill, the amendments are in it. That's another option, just support this particular version.
If I, yeah, and Noreen,
So
just a
it's
point of
first.
clarification, when although that was nice to have someone here who's been involved and read that, my motion isn't related to what you read from the audience. The motion is related to the 2 points that we as a board wrote, correct?
Yeah.
So it's related to and so the support, the reaffirming of the support is for those items, not anything that was introduced new.
Since those items aren't in here anymore, we could also, so we could either, we could just support this version.
That's true.
And if we, or oppose, or whatever we want to do, but I mean, take a position on this version that's independent of the previous one. I'm just suggesting.
Let me know if you want to do a motion. I'll just sit here until I get your
Well, do we have just Bella and Sharon, do you have any other thoughts on how to go with this? Well, we have a quorum, so we can do that.
I feel that we should refer to the most updated version, and this is not the most updated version, so we will still be behind from what the updated version is, so
So what do you think we should?
just wait until we have the updated version, right? That has every addition and.
It looks like we're not gonna get it
Or-
today, so then we would be just keeping the old position.
And we cannot, even though like we read it, we can't.
Oh, I see.
But there's nothing wrong with just this being an information only. If we go to the position that Beata just raised, the 2 points we made are in there. We've already given support for them, so if this turns into an information only discussion, I guess what I'm saying is, I can do either. I can vote the way Beata's presenting, I can just put a motion out there. That's my position.
When I was talking to Heather earlier this morning about these two versions floating around, she was saying, well, you could take a position on this, and then take also to a motion, two motions, one on this, one on the proposed changes that we've heard, and just say, yeah, we like this, or we don't like this, we like that, we don't like that, this is what, or whatever it is, whatever our position is on the two different versions, so that both, that would be both things, both what you suggested and what she suggested. Does that, and that is a way to do it. Which would be easier if we had the actual version, but we don't. But we've heard, do you want to do that?
Do whatever.
Does that feel good? Does that feel okay to me? So
Whatever the
one
will
on
of the
this.
board is,
You're
I'm
the
a
board.
I'm a funny one about voting on something that's not in front of me, so
Yeah.
I would be although thank you for being here, reading it, and I know it's accurate, until I can see it and clearly see it,
Well, we don't-
it's hard for me to vote. Just
Well, I
on-
wouldn't vote on the version of the bill because we don't know what it is, but I would vote on the changes that we heard in the webcast that were recorded, just on that. I would think, because you don't know if anybody else made changes in the bill, that we didn't, at the author's level that we don't know about. I mean, we hear them.
Yeah. Well,
So
I could.
I hear you, in other words.
Yeah, the only motion I'm willing to make is the one that's in relation to what we as a board have been speaking about all along, to reaffirm support or to do nothing. But regarding what was read, I can't go there yet.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
I make a motion that the board reaffirm our position to support, if amended, as stated in the Senate August 2018 version of AB 221. 221.
reaffirm the board's position of support if amended, if it's amended as stated in this August 20th version.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, as the version we're supporting, I can take the if amended out. If we got what we wanted, and may I just ask
Sure.
a question?
Sure.
I can take the amended out if that's what the piece is, and just say we have support because it's now in this version. Is that what your thought is?
Yeah,
with
what I
it?
was just unsure about is that, my understanding is that the amendments are in this version, this
Okay.
August 20th version.
Okay, I'll change the wording.
And just one point of clarification as to, if you said that you're, and I get it, uneasy about making a motion to take a position on the version that's not in print yet. This may or may not go towards kind of easing those concerns, but you could make that second motion that you were talking about, Richard, could be contingent based on if the version to be released contains the amendments as they were read. So essentially make it a contingent motion based on what we anticipate being in the newest version to be released.
Okay, well, why don't we?
So if I can rescind my original
It
motion,
hasn't
I
been
won't.
seconded, so.
Okay.
You could be making.
If I can make a new motion, and just so you know, I won't be making that second motion, because you
That's
know,
fine.
someone else would have to make
Totally
it.
fine.
Yeah. So, the motion I make is that we as a board support, as stated in August 20th, 2018, AB 2221 as written.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second? We have a motion and a second. Board discussion?
I'm sorry, Denise, you said as written today, the August 21st, that's what you said.
You mentioned those. Any discussion, further discussion from the board? Any discussion, public comment?
I would just like to add that I actually just received the actual document of the additional amendments, and it has an RN number, which means it's a formally issued document, apparently. I'm sure the legal team knows more than I do about that. But according to Capital Advocacy, our blogging group, it'll post Monday, but the document currently available has this RN number, which is an identifier of it hitting a certain level of formality. So if you'd like, I can send this to one of you if you'd like to see it in print.
If you could send it to Heather Martin, our executive officer.
Send this to Heather Martin right now?
Yeah. that's-
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure if we could accept that. Counselor, should we, I mean, it's,
No, I wouldn't.
we can bring it in after we vote on this. So we're still voting on the August 20th version of this bill. Any other public comments on this particular motion? No, any public comment on this motion?
No, no comment.
Hearing none, let's vote.
Yatta?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Good.
Sharon? Yes. Richard?
Yes. Motion carries. Do we want a motion, do we want to send a letter so we can communicate the position? Normally we do.
Now, given the timeliness, I think, we can, again, it's whatever the will of the board is, but given the timeliness of this, it seems to me, just in terms of board versions out there, what we've done today is enough. That's gonna go to our executive director. That's next week. If you so choose to have a special teleconference to vote on that and do a letter, I would be up for that. If you choose to hold it, whatever. But in terms of drafting a letter about support of this, I don't think it's necessary in light of, I think what we've done here today is enough in light of the fact that the bill is now out and we will see it next Monday. But at least while we were here at our meeting, we spoke about it, we addressed it, we did the best we could with the time we had together as a board. So that would be my thought.
Have we, our position of support is support it different from, it's changing our position, so I'm just wondering.
See, I don't, and that's
Oh.
interesting, because I don't see it as changing our position, because the two items that we said we would support if amended are in there, so
Yeah.
now we support it. There's no change, it's just a closure on BAM. We put it in there, we were heard from the authors of the, it's happened, we say we support it. I know there are other things in here, that's why, the piece about what was read to us at this juncture is not as relevant to me, because that's not something we as a board have spoken about. When we see that in writing, we can have a,
Well, I see them as separate things. So we've just taken a position as the board on this version of the legislation, and that's great. If it's not communicated to anybody, what's acceptable? Those who might watch the webcast. I'm wondering what the point of it would be to have done what we just did. Got it. All right.
I know Ms. Miller is not comfortable with the second motion, but perhaps it might help if there is a discussion about the prospective language, and then the board can make a decision after that if they want to send a letter that reflects one or both of the board's positions, depending on what the board decides. And this way you aren't in a potential position of sending multiple letters about a version that's out right now in print and then a version that might come out next week in print.
So suggest that we do talk about the second sort of line. I mean,
It might help.
Might help.
Formulate a decision about whether or not what and what to communicate to the author
okay.
and or the government.
Based on verbal input.
Based on whether or not there, you see that what's in print next week is consistent with what has been read by the association.
Okay, I mean, and the whole idea of, there's a new version that we just heard is being published Monday, but there's maybe a copy available today, maybe not. Is it kosher to get the RN number and bring it in and try to get a copy in here today, or?
You can try. I don't know what RN refers to, sorry about that. But you could hold off until the other items to see if there's something in print. I don't know what's expected, to tell you the truth.
Right.
But it might help you decide whether or not you want to communicate the board's position.
So, Richard, to your point, I'm not opposed to a letter being sent. Please don't think, my comments are related to logistics and timing and board, but if it so moves this board to send a letter, I will certainly, support that. I just don't know if it's necessary. Today's Friday, 2 more days is Monday. So, it's just a ergonomics thing to me, I can't explain it.
Well, and then we still haven't figured out what we're doing about if we're doing anything or not, something or nothing about the proposed version, the language that we heard today, not necessarily the version, because we don't have the version. Do we want to, how does the board feel about what we heard, whether that's the end of the question or not?
I'm comfortable with what we heard, but if we wait till Monday, we're gonna have a conference call, we'll have 2 other board members present, which are Laura and Jeff that want to weigh in. We don't have to do it, they're not here, it's good, but that gives them, I think a stronger
Yeah. So you want to hold off, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I'd like to get Laura and Jeff's input on the final.
I feel like we should send a letter when we have the most updated version, and then we just have one letter to them, support or whatever that is, and then we still stay on top of it. But of course, then that comes
So the vote, so it's not for the legislature. It's not to get in by the legislative deadline, which is next Friday, in the House. Well, the House says last day for votes is next Friday.
So technically, we get it on Monday.
Can we hold in an email?
Oh, I understand, Richard, you've said it even more. You're wanting a letter to get it in, to have something in front of the legislature. That changes.
Well,
I see where you're going.
That's what I was thinking of the legislative calendar.
Okay, yeah.
That will be in time.
That wasn't even on my radar when
But, I mean-
when I was speaking logistics.
But I mean, certainly we would be advising the governor's office if we sent a letter later, which is one of the roles of the board, is to, provide input to the department.
But the letter that we get would be in support of the one we read today. That's the letter you
Well,
said.
I mean, we haven't decided on whether, on the letter yet, but yeah, I mean, we could do a letter on this one that we've done today, and it could get to the, and it would be sent to the legislator. We do have, okay, so we're appointed by the governor, many of us, but we also have someone from the assembly, appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly, and by the Senate, and Senate Pro Tem. And, part of our role is to advise them on what we think of legislation they're all considering. So this would be an opportunity to still have some input in the legislature, although we already told them supportive amendments and the amendments have been made. So it's not, I'm kind of like, well, we already did that, so that's positive, but we would in a way reaffirming. Do we feel that we need to do that is the question. Is there value to that?
I think there is value because we reviewed the most recent version. The letter goes out saying we support some amendments, just kind of like to use motion, and send that letter out. It just reaffirms again, like, as a board, we've done our job, we reviewed the latest version at our disposal. Here's a letter, so you're aware that we're on top of it. Then, yeah, we just started reading all of the board meetings and the market meetings.
Yeah, I mean, is there more value in doing it so that the legislature as well as the governor has the support letter, as opposed to just the governor if we wait a little longer? That's
I like the legislature.
what do you think?
So, question, I could go either way. I could be moved either way, but like, is it reasonable to get Monday's version and have a teleconference and the letter goes out before next Friday? Or the flip side, do we want to make this decision today? I mean, I don't know that I'm for, I guess I do have some thoughts as I think it out. I don't know that I'm for sending a letter just about today and then, Monday, another one. So if we're gonna make a decision today, then I think we have to do the hard work and get the version they're talking about. I can't vote without something in front of me, so we have to take a break. I'm sorry. It's just the way I am. My vote's consistent. I never
No, I
deviate.
think it's okay.
So if you want to go that route, that would be then we would go that route. If we wanted to wait till Monday and you're saying all those things are doable, I'm also available I'm open to being available as a board member next week. So either works. So
Well,
whatever you want to do.
I have a question for our council. Monday, we don't have a board meeting scheduled, and it would be an emergency meeting. We would need
It'll
3
be like
days.
Wednesdays.
3 days notice, even if it qualifies as an emergency. And it's not
I think you'd be holding a special meeting with
Special.
2 days' notice.
2 days notice.
So, as soon as I can imagine you can have that teleconference is,
Thursday.
I think realistically Thursday.
Doesn't stop staff from, stop staff from starting the letter.
And it's questionable whether we would qualify for the special meeting. And we might have to do a 10-day notice anyway, right?
Sorry, 10-day notice.
For a regular, well, don't we have to normally do 10 days notice?
For a regular
meetings?
meeting.
This would, because we had an issue earlier where, whether it qualifies for a special meeting based on, is it really urgent enough to meet the standard for a special meeting?
So this seems pretty similar to that previous instance.
You think?
To discuss pending legislation, there is a deadline coming up, and so there are facts to support a special meeting. Of course, it's your job to make that finding, but you could go that route. And conceivably, as correct what I said earlier, if you get the agenda posted, say midday Monday, you could be holding a teleconference the second half of Wednesday.
Alternatively, we could simply inform people of this decision today and not go there. Just publicly.
Can we print the newest version? So would that be official document, or then give somebody, Deontay will go and print what Heather has?
Like bring it in today to talk
And then
about
we
it.
will look it over to say we did this, and then we vote on that, so we don't have to worry about any other conference calls.
Yeah, we don't-
Would that be an option, or is that?
I don't think there's no legal issue with doing
Because
it.
if it is officially, out, right, so we can, so we don't have to vote 500 times.
Or 3. I could, yeah, if we go that route, I'm supporting that too. Whatever works, without many versions of letters being out there from our point. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we've got to vote on this version of the bill. It's very close to the final version of the bill. If we, this is what we have in front of us, and I agree that we don't have the other in front of us, and it
But we
sounds
could
good,
have.
but
We could have, in like 5-10 minutes, we could have.
could we?
If
That was a question.
Heather wants to email
Yeah,
it
that's
to
what I'm
my
saying.
state email, I can then forward it to Deontay and ask him to do it. If you're okay with that, Heather was wondering. This Heather.
Okay,
I mean,
Well, because you requested I send it to Heather Hart, which I
Yeah,
did, but
yeah.
if
She
you
hasn't-
would like to.
she
actually
hasn't
send
responded.
those around. Well, I know she's probably trying to read.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, okay, I mean, that sounds fine. Good, yeah.
So,
Could you send it to Jody,
Okay.
please? I'm sorry. It
So,
would solve the question, a lot of questions.
exactly.
so then can we move on? And I will rescind my motion. The motion's already passed, but I'll amend and change that motion when we come back to this.
Or we just keep it and go, just work
Okay,
on a new version.
whatever. But this way we can.
All right, okay. Thank you for helping work through that. You're gonna write? We are gonna move on then. Chris, I know you're leaving in 10 minutes, so thank you for that information that you provided.
Made a big difference.
oh, no problem.
Yeah. It's very helpful.
Great, thanks.
I would like to move on to item number 15, time for 15. Discussion and consideration of a licensee request for board to establish a policy statement or position that suture removal is included within the scope of an occupational therapist practice. This is in response, item 15 is in response to a letter that we received and decided to put on a future agenda. This is the future agenda. The letter, so we've seen the letter before, but it was just part of a request to put it on the agenda. So it's, hello esteemed board members, asking if the board could issue a policy statement. Actually, we may have seen this. We've actually discussed it because we also got the physical therapy letter before, didn't we? Maybe not. Anyway, so a licensee asked for CBOT to put something in writing about suture removal, and can OTs do it because it's not specifically mentioned. While I don't see anything prohibiting us from doing it, having this position outlined by CBOT would add strength to our profession. Physical therapy board has addressed the same issue for PTs on their website. They've determined that would fall into the same category as staple removal. While this is not normally associated with PT, blah, blah, blah. So the staple and suture removal document of the physical therapy board is here. And I do recall, we did discuss it in a previous meeting because I remember Noreen made a comment at the bottom. We talked about the bottom. note at the bottom of it, which says, this document is not a declaratory opinion of the Physical Therapy Board of Education, the Physical Therapy Board of California. And we were questioning what it means to have a statement by the board that says it's not a declaratory opinion, with that kind of disqualifier. Meanwhile, there was something brought in, a January 2016 document, which it follows the PT document, that appears to be an opinion of the board, this board, from January 2016, having to do with wound care. Or is this from the board?
Yeah, I don't think
It's not from the board. Is this from
It
AOTA?
could be from AOTA.
It's a white paper.
If it's just a one page removed, it's kind of out of context here. Well, here it says, if you have further questions, please contact the board at 916-263-2294. There's no header to this document. So I'm not sure where this,
Because that might just be separate documents. This part might be separate.
yeah, do you know anything about this?
I do not know. I'm not familiar with this document.
I don't think we ever talked about this.
This,
Yeah, has ever seen this before?
If I had to, just following the logic, I believe this is the board's position, and I believe it's based on the white paper that followed.
oh, I see, so the pages are out of order.
Yeah.
So
that
wound
it-
management white paper is follows, okay.
Right.
I'm gonna see if I can.
And there's no page number on it. There is a page number on the wound care.
So that,
Oh, no,
you
no,
know,
no.
I
This
believe.
is AOTA.
Correct, AOTA, but the reason I believe it is here across from, so the physical therapists have taken a position and put it on their website. Similarly, we as a board have made a statement about it in January of 2016. I don't exactly know where this is
Yeah, I don't know.
on our, but this does look like it's an official.
Actually, this may be in our, some of this looks like it's in our regulation for the topical medications.
Okay.
I have,
What's the call to action on
well, we've just been asked to consider taking a position. I have here the.
Jody, do we have a copy of the newest regulations in the bag? I'm only saying that because I see.
Here it is, use of topical, 4152.1, use of topical medications, but this may be an old version. 2.1.
Thank you. Is any of that language part of this?
Now, it looks different. The 4152.1, use of topical medication, doesn't discuss, talks about debriding agents, but it doesn't really,
When you look up, I think it's AOT, because when you search.
I guess we would maybe need to know where this came from, so that we can really put it into context. Okay, so we adjourn for a minute, take a break?
Should we go to agenda item 16?
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Please?
Sure.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Our meeting after a break, the Board of OT meeting. We're discussing item number 15 on the August 24th agenda, staple and suture removal. It has been requested, one of our licensees has requested that the board consider position. There's a document, during the break we checked in with the executive officer who's sick today. This may have been prepared as a response to a previous inquiry of a similar nature. This is a document from, an excerpt from a document that was in our packet that talks about wound care. It does not specifically address staple and suture removal. Following that is a position paper on AOTA about wound management. I was wondering if I could ask our council about what thoughts about the suture removal would not have been specifically mentioned. Rules, where does it fall?
Thoughts on whether licensees are able to do suture removal? Is that?
Does the law speak to it in any way? Do our regs or practice act?
I don't know that it doesn't specifically, obviously, do suture removal.
And there's nothing specific to my knowledge that says we can address it or that we can't address it. It's pretty areas of gray. Which I think is, when that happens, it just goes by how the facility is utilizing occupational therapists. Some utilize them in wound care and degree, and some don't. I know on our burn team, I know Arrowhead, I think some of the, don't quote me, but at last conversation, we were able to do some degree of it.
I'm having a very hard time hearing you.
Oh, we're so sorry. I was already saying that the shades of gray kind of depends on practice. What people are able to do or not is kind of dictated by OT practice at a facility. Because I don't know that we have it anywhere specifically that we can or cannot do it.
I don't actually see this that gray. Having been a manager of an outpatient occupational physical therapy center, and the occupational therapists were hand therapists, I don't see this as gray. And for me, if we look at the approach the physical therapists take, they're not saying in their statement this broad sweeping thing in every practice area. Specifically what they're saying is, while we all agree that the entry of sutures is invasive and we don't have the skill for that, which I would say is a similar position of OT, we also agree that removing them is non-invasive and is required for those who have the special training. There are PTs who have training in advanced training in wound treatment. There are also OTs that do. There are PTs who have advanced training with hand therapy procedures. There are OTs that do. So I would see our position being similar, and I just don't see it as gray. And I think for this particular licensee, they're asking us to take a position because likely what's happened is now that the physical therapy, if I had to make an assumption of what's happening in that clinic, having managed both, I imagine the physical therapist taking a position means that they are clearly more likely saying they can do it, and perhaps there's nothing out there from OT, and it might be a lost.
I think that was nursing. We thought that nursing might actually come to this, the nursing reports, but because generally nurses are the ones most often removing sutures. Would there be would the board be sticking?
Now, when I practiced in hand therapy and I had specific training, I removed sutures, so
People do, yeah.
I didn't call a nurse to come to my outpatient OT center.
Right, of course. Are there any legal issues with regard to issuing a statement of this type?
Well, I think one of the risks is just other regulatory boards considering suture removal to be their domain. For example, nursing med board might take issue with OTs incorporating that into their practice.
Reza, may I add one more thing for the president? The other thing that I read in this, Richard, that we might want to think about as a board, the physical therapists they came to this conclusion after having a practice committee review it. perhaps you would like, I know further down you're gonna put a practice committee together, perhaps that's a direction you wanna go, just so that we have our Ts crossed, our Is dotted, and we have a practice committee very specifically look at this, and then come back with a recommendation at a later date. That's also an option that I think might be, I might see for this board in terms of a response to this licensing.
I have a question. Are you trained to do that, or he's trained to do that officially? Because I know the sheriff said that it's based on,
Where you practice.
yeah, where you practice, but are you trained to do it?
It's not in our schooling, I mean, per se.
Well, then,
But it's.
It could be part of on-the-job
It
training.
could be part of on-the-job, you get entry
But it's
level
not.
skills in schools, but then you go work like at a health center, and you're dealing with people all the time, and that's
Or
part of.
you take advanced training classes in order to remove those
And
sutures.
that's- you develop competency, and then they're like, okay, there's a lot of occupational therapy, right? Because you
Right.
graduate as general practitioners, but then people go out and specialize, they get additional training on the job, and they're able to establish competency and do that. So I don't know how a formal letter would be adjusted, because it's already happening. People,
Right.
according to their job, if they have this training and they have established competency, it kind of refers, and so.
We have this question a
Complicated.
lot. This would help staff and the licensed population.
Well, if
let's
we-
go with Denise's suggestions to come up with,
The practice committee.
Yes.
Just ask the practice
Yes,
committee to look at
yes.
it.
And have different occupational therapists from those areas of
Right.
practice. Hand therapy, wound management, orthopedics,
Right.
and even an inpatient therapist would be interesting to see, inpatient orthopedics would be interesting.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
Want that motion?
Or do we need to have a motion to ask the, refer something to a practice committee?
That's probably a good idea.
I think we do.
You
Refer
want to
the
make
issue.
it?
I think we do, but.
Okay, right, so it couldn't hurt.
Right.
Do you want to refer the issue? We're on 15.
Okay, so I make this motion.
I'll make it.
Okay. Good.
I make a motion that we request the president to refer this forward to a practice committee to further identify the role of occupational therapists in suture removal. And secondly, to provide to provide the board's statement on this practice.
We have a motion and a second. For any further board discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none? Let's have a vote.
Okay, Beata?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Sharon? Yes. Richard?
Yes. Motion carries. All right. Moving to agenda item 16, which is the license surrender. My copy of it. So Reza prepared a very interesting memo, which I pulled from my iPad. It's very. I'd like to thank you, Ruth, for that memo for the license surrender. It was a much more. What was the most clear to me, my impression of it, if the board members got to get it, is it's a much more complex issue than we may have originally thought.
Yes, there are some unanswered questions. There are some areas that are subject to interpretation. Let me ask you first, before going too far into this, the memo that I provided is giving legal advice to the board. Is that a document that is more or less public, or is that, does the board wish to assert attorney-client privilege on this?
What does that do if we assert the attorney-client privilege? Does that mean we can discuss it in open? Or do we have to refer it to a closed session? What does that mean, Reza?
think we can discuss it in open session, and we do have exceptions to allow that without waiving the privilege. So if the board wants to hold this issue until there are board members here, the issue of the privilege can also be held over. If you're going to discuss it today, you may wish to just decide whether this should be made available tomorrow.
Discuss as a board, yeah. I mean,
Yes.
it's much more, it's a little more complicated than I think we thought when asking the question, maybe, yeah. And having a little more time and also allowing
Yes.
the full board to review it,
Yes.
carry it over to the next meeting, is that possible? Is that good?
And I agree, and so to the point of confidentiality, if we could at least at this juncture, I don't know if you need some movement on that, but at least at this juncture, until we discuss it as a full board, I'm not comfortable with it going out in public. So do we need a motion to that today, or do we just say we're deferring everything till we have a full board?
I'd suggest making a motion to maintain attorney-client privilege on this document until decided otherwise.
Who wants to make that?
Make a motion to assert attorney-client privilege
With regard to this stuff?
with regard to the memo of issues related to surrender of OTA licenses.
We have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Hearing none, any public comment? Hearing none, let's, I'll call the vote.
Okay, Beata?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Sharon? Yes. Richard?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. So we'll carry this over to our next October agenda. For the full board to talk about it. The discussion and possible action of the board administrative manual is item number 17. No, item
Yeah.
number 17 is
Permissible
permissible communications. Yes. And we asked, Reza, could you present this?
Yes. In this case, the memo is in the board materials that we already published, so I think we have the same decision to make here about privilege. So, just kind of, sorry about that. Kind of briefly summarize a few points, and I'm open to questions, of course. So the starting point on this is, of course, this is your communications outside of meetings is governed by the Open Meeting Act. And I won't read the whole thing, but just to kind of get the discussion started, the kind of purpose of the Open Meeting Act is stated as ensuring that, quote, the people's business and the proceedings of public agencies be conducted openly so that the public may remain informed. So if you kind of keep that in mind as the spirit of the law, it helps to guide these decisions. Now, the restrictions on your communications are in 11122.5. The general rule is in subsection B1. And again, I'll just briefly read that. It says, the majority of the members of the state body shall not, outside of the meeting authorized by this chapter, use a series of communications of any kind, directly or through intermediaries, to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item of business that is within the subject matter of the state body. So the kind of crux of the regulation of your communications outside of meetings is we don't want to violate the requirements of the Open Meeting Act with respect to meetings. And stated real generally, the OMA requires a meeting to mean a few things. One is that it be publicly noticed. Two is that it be conducted publicly. And three, that members of the public have an opportunity to hear and to make comments on what is considered. So the idea is, anytime you're having a, quote, meeting, you need to observe those formalities. And so you need to be cognizant of what is a, quote, meeting, because that's what triggers those requirements. Certain things are going to clearly not be a meeting, and so the discussions there are not regulated by this section. Certain other things that you might not ordinarily think of as a meeting, according to this statute and the kind of broad definition of meeting, will be, quote, a meeting. And if you haven't gone through those formalities, giving notice and allowing the public to be present, then you will have committed OMA violation. One of the major areas in this law that kind of, I think, has the biggest potential to trip board members up has to do with serial communications. It's easy enough to address the real obvious situations and know when you've got a majority of the board together and when you're discussing something within the subject matter of the board. So it's some of the nuances that kind of trip folks up. So a serial meeting is one where you're not all necessarily literally in the same place at the same time talking together. But as was kind of explained in the memo, one board member talks to another board member, second board member later on goes and talks to a third one, and through that chain of communications, you've, in essence, conducted a meeting by sharing, by those thoughts of the first board member being shared to third, fourth by that second board member. So that's one way that serial meetings occur. That's, you can kind of consider that a chain. The other way that it happens is through what's called kind of a hub and spoke model, where, say, one of you wants to communicate something to the rest. So maybe, for example, you relay that information to board staff, and then board staff puts that information out to all the board members. So again, there you've used an intermediary, being board staff in that case, to disseminate that information to all board members. And that, again, as long as it's within the subject matter of the board, is likely a violation. Question? Sorry? You saying you previously had training on this? I would hope so. Yeah, I think the board member orientation training touched on this.
The reason that I asked for this discussion was during the period when last time Heather was sick, Heather Marmer was sick, and we were discussing some issues, and I wasn't sure if I could communicate to the board a request to get an idea of whether they wanted to meet or not meet about some of the legislation that we faced this year. And I didn't want to disturb our executive officer when she was ill, because she's also our employee, and employees have the right not to be off work when they're sick. But on the other hand, I was constrained. I could have maybe gone through other staff, but I didn't know how to handle that situation. And so I didn't know if I could send an email to people saying, do you guys want to meet about this? And so the scenarios I find very helpful here, because scenario 3, the answer is there, no. The answer is no, I couldn't do that. That's not an option, and I would need to find another way to do it in a way by going through, the board staff could send the email, and the board staff should send an email, and we need to work through that, and it wouldn't be possible for me to communicate why something was done, or why we're having a special meeting, because I was sensitive to the board members' time, and maybe because we sent an explanation out, it really does have to go through the board staff. And so I wanted to have that clarified also think the social media one is very interesting, because I hadn't even thought about that, but go ahead.
Does this include items not on an agenda yet? Like, can you talk about like that or not? Or?
Sure. Sure. So one thing before specifically talking about that is that some of this stuff is subject to interpretation. There are gray areas. So one of the things that I would consider a gray area is what's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. So, for example, calling a special meeting without talking about the substantive material that's going on in the special meeting, but just getting people's feedback on whether a special meeting should take place. You ask different people, and they may give you a different response of whether that's within the jurisdiction of the board. So I think that it's best to kind of exhibit best practices, even where something is arguably not a violation, or you might get away with it. I think there are some best practices that you can use to make sure that it's not even arguably a violation. So, first of all, taking great care to, if you are having that kind of discussion, not get into substantive material that the board should be discussing publicly. Your question was about items not on the agenda. So again, there, I think that you can go about that in a way that minimizes the chance of a violation. For example, there you might utilize board staff in kind of that hub and spoke way that I mentioned, and staff can use BCC to make sure that there's not reply alls going around to everybody.
Doodle polls.
Doodle polls is, yeah, I mean,
We tried using that this last few months.
yeah, those are handy. Those are good ways to do it. Even those, if you want to take a real hard line on what the statute says and construe it as strictly as you can, you might say that, well, the date for a meeting could be within the subject matter of the board, and a doodle poll lets everyone see what everyone else's availability is. That's a real strict, hard line interpretation of this, and it's going to severely restrict how you conduct business. Now, obviously, this statute, what I'm telling you, it is going to restrict how you conduct business, and that's something that, to some extent, it's going to happen. You can't really get around it. It's just you have to just, I guess, bear in mind that the purpose of this statute is not to enhance the efficiency of conducting business. The higher purpose, at least in the legislature's mind, is transparency in government and conducting these proceedings openly. Did that help? Okay. So also you brought up the Facebook example. In all of these examples, some of them are clear cut. Some of them kind of do approach that borderline. And the Facebook example is a good one. Facebook. I was talking about social media. Facebook, of course, is the one probably is most commonly used. That's an example worth discussing, I think, because it kind of highlights one of the nuances of this. So the scenario is, one board member posts something on their social media wall about something clearly within the subject matter. That in and of itself, an assumption is that board member is friends with everyone else on the board. So everyone else on the board has the ability to see what it's posted. Arguably, that the act of making the post in and of itself arguably is not a violation, because it's the statute says refers to discussing, hearing, or deliberating on these issues. So just posting something is arguably not a discussion, which would require some back and forth. The other board members haven't necessarily heard what was said, and there's clearly no deliberation. On the other hand, somebody else might take the position that, well, putting that out there is inviting discussion, and the other board members, it's inevitable that they are going to hear that comment. And so depending on how you look at it, the act of putting it out there, it may or may not be a violation, but as soon as anyone else goes out there and the majority of the board has seen that post, they can be said to have heard it, and then there is a violation. So that's a situation where, depending on how you look at it, the initial act may not be a violation, but it's probably best to avoid doing something like that because it does come close and arguably does cross that threshold.
Or could end up that way after the initial act that they.
Yeah, and I think it's reasonably foreseeable that the violation would occur, so you should avoid doing it in the first place.
All right. Every legal comes and talks to us about badly clean. None of this. You're gonna find me and our attorney, we're totally in compliance. We're so transparent, everything happens in our meeting.
Yeah.
The only conversations we have outside are her baby, his class, we're good, we're good.
Yeah.
Well, it is
just
also good to know that one board member could email me about a particular issue as long as I don't email the next one.
Yeah.
But I would not, you know, we have to be careful about it.
Yeah, a meeting involves a majority of members, and so, so two members discussing something, as long as it doesn't, follow that chain model, two members discussing something is fine. Even there, I would at least just put it out there that the spirit of this law is kind of that, like you said, everything should be out there in public. But at the end of the day, that's not a violation for two members to discuss something, and there may be circumstances that require that in order to get.
Thank you very much for those slides.
Sorry, I think we
Oh.
I had one more question.
I'm sorry.
As an educator, when there's an agenda on the minutes, especially like legislature and the bills, and I use those for classroom discussion, because if they want to write letters on behalf of the bills. We had the meeting today, we can have that discussion, no problem, right? We've discussed the bills here, the minutes and the agendas on the board side, so that's okay, correct?
Sorry, I'm not quite sure. Let me say
Being able to
something.
talk about the bills in legislature in a classroom topic, to be able to, look at advocacy and consumer,
Are
with
you
the board.
talking to students?
Yeah, because I'm an educator, so we pull up the minutes, we pull up the agenda, we're able to talk about it in the
Yeah,
classroom.
that's perfectly fine. I mean, if 3 other board members come sit in your classroom and
Kick us
they,
out. Yeah, you have to kick
interject.
us out.
But I think
Then that's a problem.
if I may, I think your question is probably deeper. You're wondering if you can share the board's position. I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, because it's okay.
That's what she's asking.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and there's some exceptions that are listed in the statute. For the most part, they're pretty self-explanatory. The key commonality is each section says as long as the board members are not discussing something within subject matter jurisdiction of the board. So I don't know if you want to look specifically at each example or at those exceptions. I'm sensing maybe not. So unless there's any other questions, I'll just kind of leave it open to questions, or you all can move on.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for preparing this. It's a helpful reminder, and it did clarify a couple of the issues for me which is the reason I asked for it to be on the agenda, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, I'm wondering if this is a good time to return to 9B and this document that we received, the amendments, or if we wanted to cover some other agenda items first. How does the board feel about returning to AB 2221 since we have the new version? You want to go? Are you ready to discuss that? Because people have had a chance to read it. Do you need more time to go through it?
It's just the one section.
And we're sure that there are changes. May I ask, Heather, so Heather Kitching, may I ask you, so there is no other change in here except for that one bit of language that we heard earlier from
To the
Kristen?
best of my knowledge, correct.
To the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
okay. I mean, it's quite long, so I think. And this would in this copy include such changes in italics and strikeout based on the August 20th version? I think it would. So if we look through this for additional, the only changes I see so far are on page 93 of the text, or I don't know which page we're looking at, 6, the top, 93 at the bottom.
What I get the impression of, if I may ask our public member as well, the impression I have is the only change in this version has amendment 1 and 2 and 3 out here, which indicates that we've seen all text except that.
Right, so page,
And on the page 2, they removed the and.
there's an and removed, yeah.
Yeah, but that's-
Yeah, that's it. All right, so based on that, do we feel that we want to take a position on this version of the language? What is the pulse of the board? Well, we got a motion on the previous, or the 820 version of this bill, and here's, we have now before us a new version of the bill dated 8/22 with a couple more amendments, amendments 1, 2, and 3. And the question is, do we want to make a statement about this or not?
So President Bookwalter, may I read it out loud to the board? I know we had a public member, but could I read it out loud so we can hear it?
Sure.
Okay. Through engagement in everyday activities, occupational therapy promotes mental health by supporting occupational performance in people with or at risk of experiencing a range of physical and mental health disorders. The strikeout was the and supports functioning, and it also took out including but limited to psychiatric, behavioral, and substance abuse. It took out those specific areas. It drew us back to engagement in everyday activities. Occupational therapy promotes mental health. I do have a question for our public member on this.
Sure.
Does the word promote, was there a discussion amongst you and the lobbyists and the other people who put together the wording about the word promote? Promote can have a different,
That would have been a while back, and honestly not remember a detailed discussion on the word promote. Is there a specific concern about its connotation, or?
it's, I don't have a concern, there's no conclusion yet in my question at all. I just wondered if promote doesn't always seems to me to be a supportive word instead of the actual practice of. But in the context, you would know best, and I would rely on that, in the context of the entire bill, if you believe that, that it has been addressed and fleshed out, and it is clear that we practice in the area that, of mental health alongside our colleagues who are licensed in other disciplines, albeit not providing, you know, as you indicated, psychotherapy and all those things that would be out of our scope. But if it's clear that we also practice in that through that wording, that's really where I'm going in my question. Statement question.
My reply to that would be, first of all, as I understood your comments just now, I agree with them. And I think that's why the original language we put in said promotes mental health and supports functioning. I already commented earlier about what psychology's concern was about supports functioning. So again, I would just add in that it was the view of the two associations, that the AUTA and OTEC, that replacing supports functioning with by supporting occupational performance in people, et cetera, did get us where we wanted to be with what we believe is the expanse that is ever growing of our practice.
Yeah. And I can see that. Again, I didn't have a conclusion
Yeah,
in that
thank you.
question.
Any further board discussion on this? I would speak in favor of supporting this language.
So it's almost like the options before us are to just stick with the motion we have and write a letter that includes this, or to specifically address this wording, albeit it wasn't in our original. Do you know what I'm
Well, we
saying?
could do a second motion, couldn't we?
We could.
Supporting this and then
Yeah.
do a motion to write a letter to communicate the position
Yeah.
of both, supporting both versions of the language, or one version of language, however we want to do it.
The most updated version?
Yeah, let's just do this. If we vote this for.
So, did you want more discussion on this, or?
I don't care. I presented my view.
So I make a motion that we accept the proposed amendment dated 8/22/18 on substantive language for Assembly Bill number 2221.
Clarification, are you supporting this bill as written? Because you said accepts the language.
Substantive.
But are you supporting, you didn't use the word supporting your motion. I don't know if you wanted to support, because accept is not a position.
Oh, accept.
Accept is not a position, option for legislation. There's support, oppose, support, defendant.
Got it, okay, you want the wording to, okay.
So I just wanted-
So I will amend my motion to say that the motion is to support the proposed amendment of 8/22/18 substantive language regarding Assembly Bill number 2221.
Thank you. Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Beata seconds. Further board discussion? Any board discussion? Hearing none. Any public comment?
No, thank you for a very thoughtful consideration of not only all the discussion, but allowing the document and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none. Let's call the vote.
Beata?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Sharon? Yes. Richard?
Yes. Motion carries. Board takes a position of support on this version of the language. Do we want to write a letter now? How do we communicate the position? Do we send shall we direct the executive officer to compose a letter and send it to the relevant parties with review by somebody?
Go ahead and make the motion.
I move that the executive officer will create a letter of support to the legislator and the governor's office with all the updated information.
I second.
Second, we have a second. Board discussion. Who should review? Should I review the letter? Should somebody else review the letter? Heather prefers that somebody look
Yeah.
besides her.
It's a new policy this year. But whatever.
There's nothing, there's no information, it's you.
Okay.
It's sort of implied, just so you know, we can certainly put that in our motion. It's implied as the president, you're gonna read it. So I don't know that it's always sort of implied, speaking as a past president from one to another. It's implied, you're gonna read everything.
Okay. Plus, a support letter is similar than a support amendment. You have to discuss, what the amendments are. So
Right.
it's just support. So it's probably unnecessary. I just thought I'd bring it up. We have a motion, and as part of board discussion. So board discussion, any more board discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, let's call the vote.
Beata?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Sharon? Yes. Richard?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. All right, we move on to item number 18, the discussion and possible action on the updated board administrative manual. We've seen this before. then there were some additional edits to be made. Have folks had a chance to review? Has it improved?
You know, the request that I did make the last time we went through this was to include the piece where the changes were made, not just the final copy. So it's hard to focus or to draw the attention and know exactly what has changed or to explain it. Has
It's
this-
not, because it's not, I have my copy from our meetings,
But certainly if you want to
But
walk
it
us
doesn't include, no, but it
through.
doesn't include, Noreen had some comments last time that were to be incorporated this time.
And I worked with Ms. Martin to have those included.
Have you had a chance to review it, Noreen, and find that it's, that they're incorporated? Because that's really a key question.
I don't.
I believe we covered the edits that I had in the last version.
Let me see if I have my hard copy from the last time I'll be able to read.
The alternative would be, of course, to push this off to add it to our October meeting, and get a version that has all the track changes in it, strikeouts. But it would be nice,
You know,
it'd be nice to get it done.
And first off, I do want to just back up, just so you know, very grateful, the board is very grateful that the administrative leadership has, you and Heather and Sharon have looked at this. So the question isn't at all related to those that were the reviewers, but in the interest of voting on what was and what, it's again, just a logistical thing. On the interest of voting what was and what's new, it would just be so much easier and helpful if we had a strikeout copy.
I agree with you.
So if that's the case, then I would say, if you're asking for input,
Sure.
I would say hold it till October with a full board and with the strikeout text.
Noreen, did you didn't have a chance to look at it?
I have,
Here.
it looks,
I'd be okay with voting today if Noreen can get to, quickly go through, but sounds like you haven't really had a chance to do it today, Noreen. Beata, would you prefer to hold it off, or would you be okay if Noreen?
I mean, I would like to see the
The strikeouts
changes.
also?
Yes, but
So then maybe we
They're not-
would be able to vote today. If two board members don't, would prefer it, then we should probably.
I just don't know what, changes are.
Oh, that's interesting, because the two board members on this side were on the review team, and the two that want to see the strikeout.
So yeah, 'cause you already know what was changed.
Our tiebreaker's in the middle.
That's right.
Oh, he doesn't have a vote.
Yeah, I mean, there are four votes, there are four people in our committee on the board today. If three of us were willing to let Noreen review to make sure changes are there, and if they're there, ready prepared to vote on this, then it would be worth going forward with that. If that's not the case, then we should hold it off until October and add it to our October, and give everybody more time to maybe get a version of strikeouts. So that's where I'm coming from.
it does look like they have been made except for, I think, one was made in a way that's twice what I think, on page 21, under travel approval.
Well, there was, so,
So the last paragraph of the portion on travel approval did say if the conference is not an approved OST, out-of-state travel, there will be no reimbursement for travel-related expenses, and I had wanted to insert there per diem or, but it looks like per diem ended up taking the place of or reimbursement, so I think it should read, there will be no per diem or reimbursement for travel-related expenses.
All right, so is that,
So it looks like there's a little bit, that the per diem, took the place of reimbursement instead of being inserted in.
okay, so do we,
Other than that,
what
there's nothing there.
what does the board, do people, do you want to move, or do you want to move it off to, move it to October? Do you want to, what do you think, vote on it today? You guys both want to?
That's the only change.
That wasn't the only change, that's the only change that I see that wasn't,
It wasn't
what
incorporated as
we
you
had
had
talked about.
proposed.
Okay, then we have to put it.
The other
Okay.
changes were more, there was one code section that that was missing a letter, and there were a couple of dates, but I think that was probably one of the
So,
most sensitive.
so Jeff, can you ask that we get a strikeout copy of this, for review at the October meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Or, in case, if October's too crowded, we can put it to the following, but I mean, at an upcoming meeting.
With the strikeout, it should not be a lengthy discussion.
Yeah, that's right.
We should
That's
just be
right.
able to go, oh, great, great,
It
great.
always depends on how many cases we have. Yes, that's, you're right, I mean, it's, we can try it. The strikeout copy might not be saved, well, that could be the problem. Or
No.
there could be an issue of formatting, because there's this weird column thing. So if it's used, yeah, so there may be, we could request it.
Come up.
We'll request it. Thank you. So are we done with item 18 then? Agenda item 19 is the logo, and I'm wondering if the board feels that we have enough people to look at that, or if we want to also consider them when there are more board members.
Well, could we at least take the pulse of the board members that are here? See if anybody was so moved?
That is an option.
I mean, I'm fine, however, if you want us to hold off, we can do whatever you want, but at least those of us who are here might have reviewed it. Because you have,
Would the pulse be still pushing, would we be voting on a logo today then?
We
or
might.
just taking, okay.
what if we end up all agreeing?
Okay.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
So it sounds like you have an opinion, Denise, so why
I
don't
don't
you
have
share
an
it?
opinion.
Do share it, won't you?
I don't have an opinion, I've just gone through the logos piece by piece. Logo number 1 is interesting, but that's a
Number
version.
2 is exactly the same.
That's a version of our current logo, correct? With just some font issues? Yeah, okay. So just, my questions will be point of clarification. The second page is the exact same page as the first, right?
Using like an underline from the,
Oh,
you see it, yeah, very subtle changes.
Oh, it's an underline. I
There's
like
no
that one
line.
better. Hey, I'm gonna keep that one back here.
Oh.
The next wording, is the font. I actually like this font. It looks very California to me. The next one
Makes
is.
it California spelled.
I know,
Yeah.
I saw that, I don't want to drill that. This next one is a very nice font type. I'm not crazy about the image, but I do like the font, so we're closer. The next one, not crazy about the font or the image together, it looks like a little scarecrow. The next one, yeah, it could, it's
Yeah.
kind of been there, done that, every state associated. Next one, not digging it at all. Next one, I have different color options, that's cool. Next one in the circle, something seems like it's missing. I like the next one. Is that the one that I liked the first time?
I know that Sharon liked circles, I know that you guys all liked cleaner, and you wanted acronyms because that's the way that advertising was going.
And
Staff
this
didn't
was
do
like the
easier.
neuro one, that, see, okay, I
No,
am
it's-
consistent. This I like, except I think that CBOT gets lost.
Yeah.
Although I do like this font. So, yeah, I didn't plan on having, yes, I did have a font, as you can see by my folded pages.
Yeah, and,
The ones that are in and the ones that are
I'm sorry I
out.
wasn't taking notes because,
Well, here.
No, I like 6, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
Here's the ones I don't
Somebody else
like.
I like 6, 9, and 10.
I like
That's-
10.
yeah.
What
That's
is,
10.
what is 6, 9, and 10?
They have numbers at the bottom.
I like
Oh,
the 6
you're-
too.
Oh, mine do. Do yours have numbers?
Yeah,
Yes.
they do. 6 and 10, those are the two I like.
Wow.
I only like one.
This one you like?
I like it too. But
I
this
do.
is my favorite.
6 is not my favorite. 10
Okay,
is my
this
favorite.
one is my
Yeah, my
favorite.
favorite too.
Yeah, okay.
10?
Yeah, I like 10 too. So what do we need the other people
I don't
for?
like
We
the
don't-
colors.
We're confident, we're
I'm
confident.
On record.
No, well, we have a quorum. If we would like to approve 10 as our logo, we may do so.
I like it, it looks.
And I like
No, I
it.
don't like the colors, but I like how it's organized.
Can I ask for the board staff's opinion?
Hey, you like.
Oh, that's a good call.
We took your
You have
opinions
to,
last time and sent them to ECA.
you have to see this day in and day out, 10 to 12 hours a day.
I like 10.
I did, but this
Jeff?
is.
I'm fine with it, yeah.
Say that out
Clean.
loud.
Do you know what?
No,
I
no,
like
this
some
this
more
is
input.
good. No.
No, I don't.
Well, you asked why do I like 6 and you explained.
Could board members please speak clearly, loudly, and
Well,
one at a
I
time?
was asked, why do I like 6? And I said, I just like how everything is in one line. I don't like the color combination, but I like these, you know, an overall look.
And I like that one too, except I don't particularly like the fonts
Yeah.
either. But,
Yeah.
I prefer
But-
10, I think.
Yes, 10 is better. And I don't know, you
That's the opinion of
know.
our legal team, I'm trying to get a.
You're trying to
I'm
get
trying
more
to get
people involved.
We already got stuff.
Oh, they have a black and white copy here. so-
Oh, we'll have a public fresh approach. Public comment?
Our legal opinion, Mr. Federico?
I like 10.
She likes, you have 10?
I did like 10.
She actually identified it before.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's the one.
You know, it seems like a slam dunk for 10, doesn't it?
Yes.
But-
It looks professional, it looks good. 30% like that.
You could put it on a t-shirt, you could,
Yep.
Put it on a hat.
Circularly?
You can put it on
I
a
told you not to ask the legal
coffee
counsel.
mug. You know those.
If it were a box.
Would I put
Yeah.
that decal on my car? I don't know.
Well, I'm not putting it on my car either.
I would totally put it on my car.
If it
I'm a
came
little
off.
gypsy though. It'd be okay.
It's like a country if you put it on your car.
Do you put any decals on your car, Maureen?
My daughter's school.
Okay, all right.
Do we want to have do we want to move to adopt this as a logo? Any more board members present?
Yes. I move that we adopt logo number 10.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Sharon? Any board discussion? Hearing none. Any public comment? You've already received some public comment. Thank you for your public comment on this matter. Hearing no more public comment, let's vote. Let's call the vote.
Bianca?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Sharon? Yes. Richard?
Yes. Motion carries. Number 10 it is. Our new logo. Thank you. Item number 20. Do we need a break or are we good? Continue? Good. I wanted to bring up number 20. Agenda item 20 is about some web-based technologies and requests by vendors to make a presentation to the board. Before this meeting, there is a vendor, or at least one. There's one vendor that I heard about through Executive Officer Heather Martin, who's been sort of making the rounds in Sacramento with a product that would be something that the boards would help fund, I believe, that would help with combining continuing education, compiling continuing education credits and applying them to licensing. And it might be a software enhancement. There's more explanation to it, and there's some information here about. I think it's the CME Hub is the one that she was talking about, because it seems to talk about the value, branding of the Board of Occupational Therapy, reducing auditing costs, things like that, that try to make it sound cost effective for the board. And they were prepared to come to this meeting today to make a presentation. But since in the past, we've had presentations and it's kind of out of the blue a little bit. And I didn't really want to just spring that on the board on the agenda, something that we hadn't discussed whether there are certain things such as competitive bidding. If there's a product out there and there's a direction we want to go in, maybe there are 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 different organizations that could do this. To have a vendor come before the board and market their product seems a little bit out of context without consulting the board first. Do we want to have this discussion? Do we want such a presentation? If we're going to do that, are we prepared to hear other presentations by similar vendors with competing products? So I asked that we put it on the agenda just to ask the board if you want a marketing presentation or more information about any of these products, and there are 2 of them here. Did you get a chance to look at them?
Has this vendor already presented to our executive officer?
Yes.
Does the executive officer have an opinion on the direction for us?
She felt
In terms of present to not present?
not really. It was an interesting product. She felt that it's complicated enough that for her to present it to us, maybe she couldn't do as good a job as they could, because they have it's more complicated, and she wouldn't necessarily it would be secondhand. A lot of other boards are receiving, they're going to all the executive officers of all the boards, because all the boards have continuing education requirements, and they have presented before some of the other boards, and they're prepared to come back and do that for us.
I think it'd be interesting to get, because we're held accountable to multiple stakeholders, to do due diligence. We need to hear several presentations. I just was at an EdTech conference, and technology and education is huge. And there are many platforms for continuing education. It'd be nice to see to make the best informed decision that we could, and help the staff out and the board with the needs that they have. I think it'd be due diligence to have multiple people kind of pitching.
And you feel that's a good use of, it would be worthwhile for the board to
Well, based on what
spend time here.
Yeah, looking at efficiency, absolutely.
Okay.
That's my-
Should we limit the time? Okay, so what
I think the opposite.
No, I don't. Please.
Oh, well, I would
Share.
say, I'll just tell you, when I first read this, I thought, well, our state association does something like this. So that's that. And I thought they do something like this, maybe there's something there, or I believe NBCOT even does something like this, so maybe there's something there that's within our area. Then I thought, so that was that, and then when I looked at this, certainly if it's the board's will that they come in front of us, and I can go there, but I'm gonna request very strict parameters around time, what information they bring. I don't think it's a great use of our time to have marketing presentations. I see that they could go to our executive officer, board staff, they could limit it down to their top 4. Those top 4 could come before the board. I could get behind that. But specifically about this, just seeing this information without knowing which other boards are considering them, without knowing which other boards they've gone in front of. Like if we're the only board that they're gonna come present in front of, that would skew my decision as well. Is if to the question of, is this a good use of board time? So with that, and then thirdly, cost. And I recognize you don't wanna talk about cost till they get in front of us, but cost is gonna be a driver here, combined with, it would be, what would also skew my decision is the input of board staff. If board staff said this is gonna reduce our time so much that we can do X related to board business, that would skew my decision if they would come, or form my decision, not skew, but, so all of those things would make me say, could make me say yes or no. Do you know what I mean? Based on the outcome of them. There would have to be cost involved, it would have to be very strict, in terms of how much time. And by how much time, they'd have to get from point A to Z, each presentation in under 10 minutes apiece. Because to spend more than, you know, an hour of board's time on something like this that I see as a function of staff would be hard for me. Just because we have really significant things to do. And there are other vendors, you know, I would hope that we'd also invite our own people within our practice who have these products, so we're not duplicating them. So I'm not opposed to it, I'm just waiting for a mandate from DCA to say, similar to Breeze, we're doing this with all the boards, then it would move up to a priority for me. That's just me. Yeah,
Yeah, do you have
weigh
any
in
thoughts?
on your thoughts.
I just, I don't know. I feel that isn't like we're gonna be endorsing something that's out there that we wanna, you know what I mean? It's complicated, I think, for us to, and the pricing would be, of course, a big matter in this. You know, it's complicated.
So I'd like to hear from the staff. Jody and Jeff, do you have thoughts on these products? Do you know anything about them?
I haven't been in any of those meetings.
Jeff?
I sat in on with the presentation with Heather, and it was very interesting to see the way how, at least the one provider that we talked with, had an application that was really far advanced, and it would be a huge benefit to people.
Which one was that? Was it the CME?
Yeah, I believe
First
it
one?
was the CME group.
CME Hub?
CME Hub, yes.
The first
There is
one.
also another provider that is, well, really pushing hard too with DCA.
And what is DCA's position on them coming before the board? Do they have one? Do they really?
They don't really, and it's really up to the boards to develop regulations whether or not they want to do that or not. There are a lot of, I'm glad you touched on, would it be a cost of savings or a benefit to staff as far as, you know, us working with them? Part of the model, that might not be that way.
Then there's.
I mean, but their model is they're so flexible in the way how they want to do things, that it's almost kind of difficult to kind of, it really, they would need to come here to discuss that with you. Intriguing in some ways, but again, you're right, Denise, some of your concerns, I get it, but, there also is they're offering to have like some type of integration with Breeze where we wouldn't even have to conduct audits. I mean, it would just, by virtue of the fact that they had completed CEs in this application, somebody would just be able to renew right away through that. A lot of interesting things, might be a little bit too far advanced right now, but up to you whether or not you want to. I think it's very wise, Richard, for you to ask the board whether or not they want to hear this.
Do you know if they've gone before other boards? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Only on the fact I think that there are some regulations that are by the Occupational board. I think they're actually going to implement some of their some of that providers.
I agree with Denise that the needs and kind of assessment have to be reflected from the board staff who's utilizing all this. But the board is the one who came up with, in addition with everybody's collaboration, the strategic plan and the accountability part to our stakeholders. So I think that falls into that plan to be able to look at the bigger picture because we are charged with some responsibility. I don't think the final decision on us because it's board staff who's going to be working with. That's the most important stakeholder right now. Does it work? Does it not? Is it cost effective? But from a board, I do think we have a responsibility because we did help create the strategic plan. We have multiple stakeholders that would be held accountable to. So, and that's how I frame it.
Well, and the license fees do pay for our work, and if this has an additional cost that has an impact, you know, as the use of licensing fees, we're responsible for using those wisely. What do the public members think about this? Can we open it up?
Largely, I agree with what Sharon was just talking about in terms of the efficiency, largely my staff would say.
And the staff has asked us what we want to hear about it, so it's kind of going back and forth between the staff and the board.
Well, I think one of the big problems that we'll have is our subsection C activities that are not the courses that are directly taken by individual licensees. There's a way to load, like courses into the app, but the way how they have it projected is a staff member would then have to go in and actually approve that at some point, so that would be.
Less added value.
Yeah, I mean, then we're looking at approving all these on the back end side of, on our office, so again, I think there are ways to get around it all, but there's just a lot of work that would be involved.
My concern is also that it took forever to implement Breeze, and every time we include any new technology, it slows things down, and it's all very fabulous when they pitch in the idea, and I'm not saying that they're not great or whatnot, but every time the new technology is involved, there's always several issues and slows down systems and whatnot, so again.
I agree. That's
And then
always a
just to
concern.
even develop it and make sure that it works with our board and all of the setup that we have, so it's very complicated.
They're a for-profit company though, right? They're not the state.
Correct.
Correct, okay, so that would motivate them. You know, Sharon, I have one question for you in terms of, do you think that everybody, you mentioned when I went to the piece of being opposite, do you think that everybody has to come before, like, I'm not opposed, if board staff, it has a direct ask of these two they put in here for us to listen to them, I can go that direction, certainly.
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
that's fine.
But do we have to have everybody come before us? Or?
No, I'm thinking that, I mean, there were several presentations to board staff and they came up with their top 3.
I mean, are these the two that board staff would say we'd like you to?
We've only had one actually come and talk to us. The other has been actively contacting us by email and telephone.
We could also limit it to these two since they've provided the information or something. At the moment, I mean, for the next board meeting, shook your head, so we can't do it.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of chime in.
Please, feel free to.
And you did touch on this earlier, briefly, Richard, from a legal perspective, one of the things to be aware of and just kind of handle delicately is that competitive aspect of this. So I don't think that we're precluded. In other words, I think we can have vendors come in and provide a presentation if the board wants, but in doing that, we have to avoid any even the appearance that those vendors are being given preferential treatment. So if you're talking about just giving those two vendors an opportunity to come in at the exclusion of any others, that's kind of a touchy thing. The other thing to just throw out there is if the board actually wants to go forward with something like this, the competitive nature of the process, that the mechanism through which we're going to have to go about this is likely going to involve putting out, say, a request for proposals, or I'm not sure the exact contractual mechanism, but the idea is we're going to put out a request. All the companies who are potentially, who are providing these services and are potentially interested are going to put a proposal out there outlining what they do and how their technology is the best, and their costs are, they're going to make their pitch for themselves in a package that they'll present to DCA. So that also would go towards giving an idea of who's out there, what are they offering, how do they differ from each other. That's another method of getting that information apart from having them come in and give their pitch in person.
And that's something that could be tailored for that. So if that call went out to everybody and the board staff was able to review and say, these are the top 3 we actually want to interview. It's kind of, you don't have to interview all 20 applicants. If you have top 3, you were presented the information, you decided to, right, because you have all the information.
Right. Generally, you put out the request for proposals or whatever format it's in, and before evaluating the responses, you develop a set of criteria that you're going to use to evaluate them. And then you have some readers, one board staff who are going to review it and assess points or however they do it based on the criteria that you've already established. And then, yeah, you can make a short list and say if you want to have those on the short list, come and give a presentation.
So maybe we.
So that would be the process that I would see staff doing.
Yeah, staff.
Everything he outlined would be done by staff before it comes to us. So I don't know if I think we're there yet.
So we could support the process with staff at DCA, of, whatever DCA is, if it goes forward, investigative process or a competitive bidding process, our staff, senior staff can participate in that. We're not opposed to the idea of this per se, but we don't want to get involved in having to have every one of these vendors come before us and be giving individual time.
Right.
Is the issue.
So we would be able to, I mean, right now we've just been contacted by 2 vendors. If we were to put this on a public, for a meeting, for our next meeting or whenever, we would ask vendors to submit something to us, and then we would develop a criteria on.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. So, if all you're looking at is having vendors come in and give a presentation without initiating the formal state contracting process, then, yeah, you can contact these vendors, invite them to come in. The only thing I suggest is if you're doing that, you want to go about it in a way that still, it doesn't appear that it's only open to these vendors. So I'm not sure exactly how you go about letting the whole universe know that we are, open to presentations, other than kind of the formal contracting process. There's got to be a way to do it to where you can informally have them come in. Just off the top of my head here, I don't know exactly how we go about it. But
Well, I have a question for you on that, if I may. If it were not an RFP, because we're not suggesting that, couldn't the criteria be based on what's called inclusion, exclusion? For example, board staff would develop the criteria. If they want to bring it before the board, before they go forward, they could or not. I don't have an opinion on that. But it would be exclusion and exclusion data. That could be the informal way of getting, so you put it out to all the vendors, and you say you would be included if you met these criteria. For example, you have an integration variable with Breeze, let's make up that one, So they would establish the criteria that would say, this would make it cost value, this would be a benefit if these, to look at these products if they did X, Y, and Z. That's the inclusion data. And if they didn't do it, that would be the exclusion data. Do you understand what I'm asking? It's an informal way of putting it out there without having to go to a whole RFP. And then their criteria can also say, we're gonna narrow it down to the top 4 vendors that meet that criteria.
yeah, I mean, you can do that, whether you're going the RFP route or for now just informally gathering information. You can establish your criteria and identify who should apply and who should filter themselves out as not being able to integrate with Breeze or meet whatever criteria you set forth.
I don't think we have enough info to continue even.
Denise, can you just elaborate on that? I'm sorry, you don't have RFP, so for people that I don't.
Request for proposal. It's a business, it's in.
So when, for the state contracting process, we would put together something that says, here's what we're looking for. Here's the services, here's the minimum criteria that you have to meet. And that gets posted online. It's advertised for a certain minimum amount of time so that any contractors out there can go online and see it and decide if they want to apply. So going that formal route, it's advertised online in a specific area where vendors go and look.
So you're looking at equity across the board?
Yeah, that's clear, it's set up that way so that it is equitable and it's fair.
It's like a job.
It's a long process, though.
Yeah.
It's always a long process.
If you're going informally and not initiating the contracting process yet, but just gathering information, having folks come in, I don't know that you're not advertising it on BidSync or eProcurement or whatever the website is right now that's being used for that state advertising, but you just want to take some safeguards to make sure that it doesn't appear as if you're favoring some of those. And it could even be, at least one step to take to go a ways towards that is making an announcement at the board meeting where those presentations are taking place. That this is not intended to provide these vendors with any favor, or it's open to other vendors who meet minimum criteria.
so the question continues to, I'm hearing from people that they think the staff could continue to gather information on this stuff, but they're not at a board meeting or not necessarily at a board meeting, future board meeting. Where are we with that?
I personally would like to, I would like to know what the staff needed and how best to support them.
Okay, so you want more information from the staff?
I'm in the same spot. I think staff
Okay.
has to do more work before I really have an opinion on if they come before us or not.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just take, we won't put it on the agenda, and we'll just ask the staff, keep looking at the standards. Let us know if you feel you agree.
So how would we best support you in that process?
Also, if DCA decides, comes out with something more, the momentum starts building for an RFP or something.
But if I may, Richard, I do think it is helpful though to also say to staff that when that time comes and there is an ask of the board, please make sure that there's a crosswalk between specifically why this vendor with what our processes are, why there would be a benefit, what's the risk-benefit ratio, and what's the cost. Those are going to drive the decision on if I even want to see them. If at least for me, I mean, if it's cost prohibitive, I've just lost 30 minutes I can never get back in my life.
Right, because we can't be selective, that's why I'm with you, Denise, about maybe not bringing to the board, because we can't be selective in that way, really, without favorite, unless we do as Reza says and just announce, anybody else who wants to come, gets to come, and then we're kind of stuck with that.
Yeah, but it'd be like
Do a
20
presentation all day long.
Could be
Yeah.
1 or could be 20. All right.
Yeah, that would not, could you imagine me notice it?
Shall we move on, shall we conclude item 20 and move on to item 21 on the agenda? The executive officer report. Heather is not here to discuss it, so much of it is self-explanatory. I will, did you want to say anything about it? Jeff?
No, not really. I mean, if you're prepared to, I will.
There's only one aspect that I was going to talk about, which is the fund condition.
Okay.
Did you have information about that to discuss?
I just
You can
know.
talk, you can present it.
I just know very basic about the fund condition right now. I know
Me
we're
too.
doing very good.
I want to know about the larger office space.
I don't know about that.
We're still in the works of pursuing that. It's a long process. Anything with the stage takes a little while.
I wanted to bring up the fund condition because there's been an issue with the funding system, fiscal, I think it's fiscal, right?
Fiscal, yeah.
Fiscal. Whereby there weren't, reports were not generated last year for quite a few months. And apparently, when Heather did get a report, the fund condition looks better than was projected, significantly better than was projected in terms of months of reserve, I think it is.
Right.
So is that your understanding,
Yes,
Jeff?
yes.
So there's a big jump in the fund, in the reserve, months in reserve this time, and it was unexpected, and so it needs further exploration to see maybe what happened, because we got these reports that said one thing, and now we're getting reports that are significantly different in a way that suggests, is there an artifact of the data that's incorrect, or what made, were the old ones too low? Are these too high? How to reconcile that?
Well, we have had the recent fee increase. It's kind of going that may, I'm sure that's attributing a part of it.
And it's because of the fee increase that we need to explain,
Yeah, I mean, the way we have to look at the projections are just projections. I mean, usually they kind of straight line them across. And I don't know, maybe we have more people that have applied for state licensure this year than previously before. More people are coming off of, and also the inactive status is probably really the biggest change. But where before there was a $25 fee, now people are paying the biannual renewal fee. I don't know if we calculated 50% of the people would just you know, let their license lapse and go into delinquent status versus, you know, whether or not they would renew their license with the full biennial renewal fee. Maybe more people have done that than we projected. So yes, I mean, I think what you're asking is, can we kind of drill down and find out really why the revenues are coming in over what we projected?
Over what we projected, yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that in the future reports.
And maybe.
I don't think it's significant, though. I would just like to point, you know, I'm looking directly at the report as a business person. I think it's good, and I think that
It's not like we have 25
the 8
officers.
reasons that you just gave likely contributed, so it'd be great to get the granular data. But, you know, 8.8 prior to the implementation of a dues increase to 10.2, okay, so we've gained a month more. Yay. I mean, you know, if I was in business, I'd be nervous. 11.5, I think that all those projections have to do with some of the changes we've had made. So I think it's a good thing. I think that the decisions we've made are moving the board in a direction where we are in a very solid, I think it's a indication of that was a solid decision. That was a good decision.
And it does
So,
decline over time,
Yeah.
Is this something you want Heather to report on briefly in October before we close out 2015?
She usually does a executive officer report at each meeting, so yeah. she can include it in-
So-
we can ask for that, sure.
Just to make the connection.
It's nice to combine.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I don't think.
and it's when you get below 6 months, right, that you worry, or it could be at 8 months in 2021, which is. Any further discussion about that, any board, any comment from the public about that? There is some, this occupational therapist renewal notice. Do you know what this is in the packet about, Jeff? Just, these are
I
just
think
information.
Heather, boy, I think Heather was going to ask you if you would consider not sending out the renewal notice anymore, and we just sent out this letter. It would save us on mailing costs, as opposed to the renewal notice that is, what, 4 pages?
Oh, I see.
That we just send out this simple letter saying your license is up for renewal, you can renew on the.
That's
the
a great
basis.
idea. But I renewed online this year, and boy, congratulations for all that work on Breeze. It was great. It was great. My license came right away. I say it was great.
I think
3
Richard
times.
has done it virtually,
I have.
All of us.
all the board members have done it.
It was
I
bad.
think Heather said she looked at some stats on it, and then we are at like 80% right now, people using Breeze.
That's fantastic. So that supports, is that something they just implement, Richard, or do you need, what do we need from the board? This is a great idea.
I'm not sure. It sounds like we would need to make a motion to do that. Is there approval, legal approval, to not use a form that's, is this a new form? Would we need to get?
I think all these types of documents do need to be approved by legal, but this is pretty simple.
It's
Going from this 4-page renewal document to just a simple notice telling them that they need to renew and they.
So it's not just sending out as new, you're just cutting out 3 of the pages that they don't need.
Well, yeah, this
might
would be
new.
new.
This is.
Oh, it is good.
Yeah.
So it's a new form, so we would have to vote to ask, to change the form from this to this, basically.
Yeah.
Do the public members have
Yeah.
these materials?
Yeah.
You see that there's the renewal notice, which is a dense 3-page form, and then there's the 1-page thing.
Yeah.
What are, as licensees, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I would second what Denise said about our own renewal process. It's so much easier. So congratulations on working come so far, but yeah, I like this idea.
Do you have concerns about the 20% of people who are using paper forms, or do you think?
I do not, mainly because this isn't the most evidence-based remark I'm gonna make, admittedly, but, you know, my experience over time, like with having association, newsletter processing, everything I've been involved with that is a transition from paper off of paper, always seems to go through that, like, small window of people slower to change, but ultimately it seems to happen. I mean, my experience in general has been that in 2-3 years' time, nobody ends up even remembering that we had a paper process, so I know. I feel like sometimes there's just a few people who need to be taken along with the change, and ultimately everybody feels okay with it. If that makes sense, that's just a personal experience statement, is what I'm saying.
How about if this were still available online?
You know, I was just going to, well, this document is made to go through the Department of Consumer Affairs remittance processor unit. By us proposing this new, just this one-page document, it is not going to require our licensee to renew on Breeze. If I'm not mistaken, that letter does tell them that they go onto the board's website, and there is an application that somebody can use and send to our office to renew directly. So we are not requiring people to renew 100% on Breeze anymore.
But they have to go to get the form online.
Exactly. They download the form, they send it to us. So we're not limiting the way how they pay.
Reading this letter, it doesn't say anything about, it does say for additional information, contact the board at this number, or this email. It doesn't say anything about doing a paper application. And so the concern, when I read this, just from this letter alone, it looks like the only way to apply is to go online and do it through Breeze, which leaves 20%, if that is true, at least 20% out in the cold. I hear you saying that they could still do it by mail. I wouldn't think so reading just this alone. So I would have that concern that, and if that's the case, if you are requiring them to go through Breeze, then it does approach an underground regulation, and that's.
I can assure you that is not Heather's intent.
Yeah, but so my concern is just the way that this letter reads. I would want to revise language here
Add a statement saying that you can retrieve a paper application on the CBOT website.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that you're encouraged to apply online. I don't know how you want to say it,
But I think that the motion really from the board is to direct staff to work with legal to get this form. You then, as the president, would review this form. I don't know that it has to come back before the board. It's a staff function.
Well, I think we have to vote on the form. It has to go through the whole process.
Okay,
You
you
need
see
a
this,
form.
we see this as a, I guess I need to see it as a form, whatever.
Because we did have to do that, we had to do the field work form.
Okay,
We did.
whatever
That
the
goes through.
process is.
whether you call it a form or not, my concern was just the language in the letter.
So at this point, then, our action before us is to direct staff to work with legal to bring back the form.
Second motion.
I'm not making it, I'm actually asking if this is the action. To direct staff to work with legal to bring back the form for
To add-
consideration.
with adding statements with where to find the paper application online.
I believe so.
Could it be much simpler than that, whether or not you agree with this process change as far as
Yes,
the
that's
renewal
a part of
document?
it, the
And then
motion
for
as
us to
well.
work with staff
That's-
to get a letter, that way
That's
we can
the-
implement it sooner? Instead
Yeah.
of bring it back to the board for you to actually look at the letter. I think you're gonna be fine with the letter if it makes it through legal approval, correct?
I was going there, but he just said we had to review every form, similar to what we did.
Do we not have to review it? Do we not have to review it?
I think you have to approve the form, but this,
Has to be approved.
the point was raised, is this a form? This is more of a letter informing them that they're.
I see. It's not a form.
That's not a form, so it could
I
be,
see.
so the motion from the board, going back to the original statement, the motion from the board could be to direct staff to work with legal to get the proper wording for consideration in this letter, and then, that would be it. Doesn't need board approval, we'll have the president, if you want other people to look at it, that would be your domain.
No, I thought it might be required because it was a form, but if it's not a form.
And then it would be nice, though, if in her future executive report, I don't think we need a motion on this, but it'd be cool if she brought it back and we got to see it again.
Yeah.
But
Maybe
we
it's
don't.
a pilot.
Yeah. So if you want, if someone wants to make a motion, they can. If you want me to do it, I can.
Lorraine, do you have some concerns?
You know, you just may be thinking of forms that become either part of the regulations or incorporated by reference into regulations.
That is what I'm thinking of, yes.
Yeah, and then in those cases, yeah, the board is always going to be adopting that regulatory language.
I see.
I think where the board and the staff are going now is a process by which the notice of renewal gets shortened down to either inform the licensee, well, first to inform them the license is up for renewal, and second to say, go do it to Breeze, and now we're suggesting, or in the alternative, go here for paper copy to download or to request a paper copy if there are still those 20% of people who want to do it through the mail. And I think that's where you're going with it.
Correct, that's where I'm going with it. And then now, would we need to, the board vote on that, or would we simply instruct the staff to proceed with this? Would be helpful to have a motion from a legal perspective?
It'd be, I suppose, helpful to have a motion to know that the board is in favor of shortening the amount of information that goes to the licensee to direct them either here or here. I think that's, if it's a change from what has been the process, it certainly doesn't hurt to have a motion to say the board is in favor of encouraging
We're encouraging people to use Breeze
do it
more.
online, but
That's the
still
way.
giving them an option, because otherwise you are in danger of going into underground regulation territory by requiring.
Right, we don't want to do that. We certainly
an
don't want to do
online
that.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. So I would make a motion
Thank you.
that the board supports an abbreviated process for notifying of license renewal, that board staff would work with legal on this process.
We have a motion and a second. Any board discussion? Hearing none. Any public comment? Hearing none. Let's call the vote.
Bianca?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Sharon? Yes. Richard?
Yes, motion carries.
And then just as a courtesy request to the executive director, it'd be great to see what you finally come up with. If she could share in a future report.
All right, so are we done with the executive officer's report? I believe we are. We'll move on to item 22, selection of 2019 meeting dates. We have 4 of our 6 board members here, but we could identify some prospective meeting dates and revisit the issue later, rather than pushing this off further.
I just wanted to propose, wherever we go in this direction, that we kind of keep this format. We've been coming back to this location at this time of year each time, and I think this particular location, this university at this time, works very well. This has been a win for our board each time. Thank you to the University of St. Augustine. It's been a win. And also to note, I asked the president of the California Occupational Therapy Association, and it does look like the October meeting in 2019 is in Pasadena, right? Oh, that's right there. So that tells us that's likely in LA.
Yeah. The OTA. Just looking at the OTAC conference in 2019.
The other option for us to consider, just something, I'm just gonna throw it out there. So our fall meeting this year is in Los Angeles, and due to a couple things with certain board members, we could theoretically, if I were to just throw this out there, look at February in Los Angeles again. The next meeting in May in Sacramento, the next meeting in, or San Francisco, whatever. yeah, something like that, San Francisco, the meeting this time of year, August, here in San Marcos, and then the November meeting up in Sacramento, we still can have a one-day meeting in Pasadena. We don't have to have it as an official, do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't, we had done that where we were building our meeting around the conference, and although it's good to do that, we don't have to be locked into that. Because what that does, now that their conference is at Pasadena, puts us where the first two would be up north, the second two would be down south. Just based on our history. And yeah, I've
Okay.
thought about this way too much, by the way. I spent a lot of time on this. I do.
I like
You have
that
to
idea.
speak up.
Yeah, I like it. So that can I for sure attend the one in February, because in LA, then after that,
You have to be more specific.
for the February
Would you not be
meeting,
able to attend if it were not in LA?
I don't know yet, most, it will depend, but for sure I will attend the one in February. If it's in LA.
So as we're thinking through those dates,
So when's it, the Sacramento one was when again, May-ish?
well, that could be actually San Francisco. Who wants to go to Sacramento?
Well, we can never get this big, yeah, San Francisco. We're supposed to have one in
Or
Sacramento.
Oakland.
We're obligated to have one in Southern California, one in Northern California, or one in the Bay Area in San Francisco, one in LA, and one in Sacramento, each year, those three locations. So we have to have a Sacramento one at some point.
November.
So, yes, November. Well, we're having October, or we're going to do October and November. The other question is, are we going to have a lot of legislative activity, schedule executive meeting? Do we want to schedule extra ones between March and July? Because that's when the heavy, February is before the legislation comes out, kind of. And then there's all this, like this year, we've had all this activity.
It would be hard for me to commit.
I mean, we'll be doing special meetings, which means the staff, burden is on staff then to do doodle polls and get people organized on the fly a little bit, as we've been doing a little bit this year. I mean, I always think planning more meetings and then, which is easier? Scheduling fewer meetings ahead and then adding meetings, or scheduling more meetings ahead and then canceling them. And I'm not sure how people feel about that. It's hard either way for us, and then there's the staff. Is it easier in the staff to?
Don't ask, that's really a question for Heather to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's better always to have meetings set ahead of time than kind of.
I can't commit to more than 4.
Well, then that's what I think.
I mean,
And
what I can do, let me say it differently so it doesn't sound
And
so.
then Jeff is also like, doesn't make much difference.
Well,
It's just
no,
schedule changes every week.
to be fair to where you're trying to go, every year on this board, I've been able to commit to 4. If you had a shorter time frame, like you said, between January and March, I'd like to have a few more dates. I could definitely work that, but to open up the whole year with the possibility of dates and they might go away, it would be too hard to manage my calendar that way, just the way my work is.
I don't know.
You don't know either.
Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to defend, but I don't know if that's my name or name, or if that, there's just, I don't have anything.
Okay, so did you have, you mentioned months, did you have specific dates within those months that you were?
I didn't.
I mean, February in LA, August in San Diego, San Marcos, October in Los Angeles, we need Sacramento, or San Francisco in May.
Uh-huh.
We do need to have a Sacramento, or San Diego we don't need to do actually.
We used to do November. We used to do November in Sacramento, by the way. We only moved it to October because of the state and what we could do theoretically there is we could look at, instead of having a 2-day in October, we could have a 1-day. It could be specific to legislate, it could be specific, and it could be, there could be some very specific tasks around that meeting. And also
Right.
hearings.
It depends on disciplinary actions, of course, but yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's the issue that we have,
Mhm.
is that if we get disciplined, we have to do it in 2 days. We always, today, with this meeting, we almost thought we would be able to make it a 1-day meeting, but that may
Yeah.
not. All right, well, we need to, I mean, the October 6th, for the October meeting around OTAC, the OTAC conference starts on Friday, correct?
There's like pre-conference institutes on Thursday.
So, we could do 16 or 17 for a 2-day meeting, or 17, or unless, if people want to do pre-conference institutes, but I don't ever do this. Sorry. We're kind of looking at those. Why don't we put together some dates and then bring them to the next meeting, and everybody else can take a look at them too and see how that will work. Does that make sense today?
Would you like us all to give you suggested dates, go back and look at our calendars, send suggested dates to the executive director, Heather Martin?
Well, that's what this meeting was for, but we can also do it next, because there's only 4 of us here.
Yeah.
But we could iron out a couple of, we've got some months. Maybe we can just take the months to the next meeting and say this is what we're thinking. But if we have even more specificity, blackout dates, we can do that.
Well, if we are sticking with October in Pasadena, I wouldn't put February in LA, but if you,
Right.
I'll put that in an email to you. Because I do think it's critical that we come down here to the San Diego area. It's been working for us each time. But, you know, I'm just one person.
What do you think? Do you want to put this off till October? You want to do something now? I think we want to do this in October,
Yeah, let's do this.
when there's more people here.
Yes.
We've
I'll
got.
give my
we have a little bit
suggestions
of- Yeah, put the
before
suggestions.
then.
That's good, yeah, I think putting the suggestions, giving the suggestions
Awesome.
is fine. It's, I'm not sure what Heather can do with them.
Want to start? Okay.
Did we have any public comment on the issue of meeting dates?
Just that if you ever need an extra space in Los Angeles, we would love to have you at Cal State Hills.
Well, thank you.
Carson, yes, I would fill the room with students just like this one. Yes. Working on it.
During the school year.
They're on break this week.
Carson, right, you say, huh?
Carson, about 30 minutes south of USC's main campus. Little
Yeah.
10, just off the 110.
We've been there before. They have meetings there. Strategic planning dates. Do we have any information on that?
Sorry,
Jack?
I don't know.
We've done those usually in the hottest part of the summer in Sacramento in the past, as I recall. That seems to be.
Is it time for a new strategic plan?
Yeah, that's the kind of question. I thought that plan was for 5 years, wasn't it, the last time? Then wasn't it adopted a couple of years ago? or a year
Yeah,
ago?
this will be coming up on 3 years, unless they're
Oh,
running.
time flies.
Let's take a little break and think about. I share that. I share your concern. We need to take a little break. Excuse us. We'll be right back. 5 minutes, maybe.
Okay. How long can this be?
Welcome back from our break. We are just on our last items. We decided to move the meeting dates into next meeting so that we had more of the board members present and had a chance to go over them, present some proposals to the staff. And as far as strategic planning, we're not exactly sure how many dates that we need for that. So we're going to ask Heather Mark to clarify that and to talk to again to move that had a discussion as well at our next meeting. So that's items 22 and 23. Item 24 is suggested agenda items for a future meeting. Do we have any such suggestions? From the board, no? Denise or Beata, no? Legal staff?
I found it very interesting in her report that she has the comparison report of what other states are doing. I think that would be helpful to know prior, as part of the earlier agenda item about any of the vendors coming. What she has in her report about doing a comparative analysis with other states on CE, or that would be more compelling and interesting to me first, prior to hearing from vendor. I thought that was a very cool feature item.
Okay. Okay, with that, Jeff?
Yep.
Other potential items? Any items from the public? Hearing none? Do we have a motion? If that's our last item, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move that we adjourn the meeting.
Adjourn. Meeting
So
adjourned.
moved. Have a great
So moved.
Labor Day.